Hey guys, it's your favorite rogue Chirpy, bringing you the superbly delayed Subtlety guide. I wanted to wait to make this guide till I had perfect sub-rogue gear to really show off what the spec can do when itemized correctly. However, that seems impossible for me at the moment due to the seemingly impossibly low drop rate on Sparks of Ingenuity, so while my gear is good enough, it could be even better with higher damage output should I eventually get all the correct pieces, but I'll get more into that later. Let's get on to the guide. First, let's get started onto the talents. This is the general use talent build that I go with an M+. You could trade out Numbing Poison for Atrophic Poison if you want, but the rest is pretty much mandatory for the most part. You could also trade out Fleeted Footwork for Iron Stomach, which is useful in higher keys especially. I like the Fleeted Footwork just for the extra movement speed when I know I don't need Iron Stomach for the extra survivability. However, Iron Stomach is an amazing talent, so if you find that you're having issues staying alive in dungeons, this will make sure that you have extra survivability with your Crimson Vial and your healing potions. Over to the Subtlety side of the tree, we go down into Gloomblade here, and here you can see we don't take the Shadow Step because we have Shadow Step in our class tree. We take Secret Technique, which is very important, Black Powder, very important, Tornado, very important, and we work our way down these two other trees as well. Right here you have a little bit of variety with what you can do. Without a Trace gives you an additional charge on your Vanish, which comes in use for canceling mechanics, such as on the last boss of Naku Defensive when you get targeted with a spear, or on Fenrir in Halls of Valor, helps you cancel out the dash mechanic he does. You could also take one of these as well. I've seen different rogues take Fade to Nothing, which is a DR anytime that you enter Stealth, Vanish, or Shadow Dance. So every time that you're entering those things, you're gaining DR. And this one gives you an Absorb Shield for 30% of your maximum health. So there's uses for both of these talents. You can go with either one. I like the extra Vanish charge because it also gives you an extra Shadow Strike and an extra chance to apply your Find Weakness with Silent Storm. So this talent, Silent Storm, it works really well in conjunction with Without a Trace, because whenever you gain Stealth, Vanish, or Shadow Dance, it causes your next Shuriken Storm to have a 100% increased chance to critically strike, which will apply Find Weakness to all your targets, and make it so that way you're dealing even more damage to them. So for itemization, your priorities are main stat, over crit, over mastery, over verse, over haste. You see here, unbuffed, I have 36% crit, 69% mastery, 12% verse, 5% haste. So ideally you want your mastery to be minimum 70%, and you want your crit to be as high as possible as well. I say minimum 70% because the higher you can get your mastery, the even better. I've seen some sub-rogues be able to hit 84, 85%, which is absolutely amazing. So for your weapons, you want to have ideally daggers with crit mastery in both slots here. I do not have a second dagger yet, but eventually when I get another spark, I will recraft and I will make the same exact dagger for my offhand. And the reason you want that is to make use of Shadow Techniques, which is right here. Your auto attacks have a chance to generate 1 combo point and 4 energy. So if you have more auto attacks with a dagger in your offhand, you have a higher chance of gaining more combo points passively and more energy passively, which really helps with your overall damage output. For trinkets, you have 5 options. You have the Whetstone, which I have in my bags. Right there, you want one of these. It has mastery on it. It's a really good on-use trinket. It works on cleave and single target very well. You want Boon, which is very good for AoE, probably the highest damage AoE trinket that you can get. You want Grief Torch, which is a very, very good on-use single target trinket that has an option or a chance to cleave as well. And it also gets extreme value if somebody does unfortunately die while in your group or your raid. So Manic Grief Torch, Boon, Whetstone. The other 2 options that you have are the Controlled Current Technique, which is a passive trinket that increases your auto attack speed as well as has a damage proc. And the last one that I do not have is the Whispering Incarnate Icon, which gives you a bunch of critical strike. And if at least one other person, being a tank or a healer, has this in your party, it has extreme value. But even on its own, for sub-rogue, this is an amazing trinket that you should be using. Currently, for my sub setup, I'm using Grief Torch and Boon, because these are my 2 strongest trinkets that I have overall. Controlled current technique is a very good trinket, but it does have some very unpredictable timings. Sometimes it can proc in between pulls and you're just losing the damage while you're moving from pack to pack. So it's not as good as the Whispering Incarnate icon would be for sub. So if you have to choose between the Whispering Incarnate icon or Controlled current technique, 9 out of 10 times I would pick the Incarnate icon even if you're the only one in the group. However, if it's all you have, you might as well use that. For rings, you want the Seal of Diurna's Chosen, which is a rare drop off the first boss in the raid, Aranog. It gives a lot of versatility and critical strike, as well as has the damage proc on it if you deal fire damage. And we get that fire damage from our Flaring Cowl, which is a spark crafted piece with an embellishment on it that deals AoE fire damage every 3 seconds while you're in combat. Of course, you also want your 4 set. And because we're using Flaring Cowl, we have to go for gloves, pants, shoulders, and chest. For your second embellishment piece, you want an Elemental Lariat with Mastery and Crit gems. You could use High Mastery Low Crit or Low Mastery High Crit gems. And for your second ring, you want any ring that is Crit Mastery here. This is a High Crit Low Mastery ring, Platinum Starband. I got this one in my vault, but you have quite a few options here. You can go for the Valkyr Ascension Signet in Halls of Valor, which is right here. High Crit Low Mastery. You could also go for the Woebearer's Band, which is Low Crit High Mastery. This one's probably more preferable if you're able to get this at a higher end level because it has more mastery on it. You could also make a crafted ring with Crit Mastery on it or Verse Mastery on it, depending on if you're already really high up there on Crit. So you have a lot of options for your rings, a lot of options for your gear in that sense. For consumables, this is the file that you want to be using most of the time, the File of Tepid Versatility. This just gives you a flat 4 or 5% versatility buff, that's 5% damage done, and 2.5% DR as well. This is just a very good general file to be using, and it's also very cost efficient, so even if you're not an alchemist, you could pop 2 of these in dungeon and it'll still be very cost efficient. For your battle potions, you want to be using the Elemental Potions of Ultimate Power if you can get them. And to get these, you need to put crafting orders in at the crafting tables. Or if you can't get those, you want to be using the Elemental Potions of Power instead, which is just the general one that you can get from the auction house. This is your battle potion that you're using pretty much on cooldown whenever you get the chance. For your weapons, you want to be using one of 2 things. If you have a lower crit value, you want to be using Buzzing Runes. This gives you critical strike rating on both of your weapons, so you want to use 2 Buzzing Runes every dungeon you go into, 1 for each weapon. Your other options are Attack Power Stones, which increases the attack power of your weapons, making you deal a bit more damage as well. So if you have really high crit value already, this is probably more favorable. You can put these on daggers, sharpens your bladed weapon, and if you're using a mace in your offhand, you can use the Primal Weight Stones instead. So for your gems, you want to be using either the Sensei's Alexstrasite, which is a high crit, low mastery gem, or the Sensei's Neltharite. This is a high mastery, low crit gem. In most cases, I would probably end up using this gem instead because every other piece you have already has a lot of crit on it, and you're trying to get the most mastery value as possible. And then for your main stat gem, you want to come over to the crafting tables and get a Skillful a Limited Diamond, which is a primary stat and mastery gem, or the Inscribed a Limited Diamond, which is a primary stat critical strike gem. So these really just depend on what your stat values are. If you're already at 35-36% crit, you probably want to be investing more into your mastery stat. For your enchants, you want to get rank 3 Sophic Devotions on both of your weapons. This will give you a chance to increase your primary stat by 932 for 15 seconds. For your bracers, you want Devotion of Avoidance, makes you take less AoE damage. For your chest, you want Waking Stats, which increases your primary stats by 150. For your cloak, you want Graceful Avoidance, which again increases your damage reduction from AoE and reduces your fall damage by 20%. Stack that with the rogue passives as well, and you're going to be taking very minimal fall damage. For boots, you want Watcher's Loam. Some people say to take Plains Runner's Breeze, which is a movement speed increase, but we're talking survivability here for M+. So this will increase your stamina, gives you a little bit more survivability, therefore I believe that this is the better enchant. For rings, you want the Devotion of Mastery on both of your rings, because like I said earlier, you're probably already hitting that 35-36% crit, and you want to be getting as much mastery as possible. so mastery is a higher value in most cases. However, if you are really low on crit, then go for the Devotion of Critical Strike instead. And then for your legs, you want the Fierce Armor Kit, which increases your stamina and agility. Now onto the juicy bits. But before we get started, I would really appreciate it if you take 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment as well. It really helps me out. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you guys so much. Now let's get to the rotation. So when you're not in cooldowns, what you want to be doing when you're in a pack, aside from keeping your slice and dice up, is you are just getting ruptures up on the entire pack. So once you have ruptures up on the entire pack, that's when you start spamming black powder. This is assuming you have no cooldowns available. So you're just maintaining your ruptures and maintaining your slice and dice. So on AoE, with all of your buttons available, you have a couple rules to follow. 1, you never want to send Shadow Dance or Symbols by itself. You always want to have them paired. You never want to send Secret Technique if you're not in Dance. You never want to send Tornado if you don't have Dance coming up or already in Dance. And the reason for this is because every time that you send your Secret Technique, we are trying to stack up our Dance Macabre. And we need at least 3 stacks on this by using different abilities before we send our Secret Technique to get the maximum damage from it. So if you look on my Affinar UI, when I'm in Shadow Dance, this little red symbol shows my Dance Macabre stack. So now I know that if I press my symbols and my Secret Technique, whatever, I'd be able to get maximum usage out of it. As far as Shadow Blades goes, you pretty much just send this whenever it's available. Get more uses out of it, you get more damage overall. And Shuriken Tornado, you pretty much also want to send on cooldown. The only situation that you do not send Shuriken Tornado is if you're on single target and you have an AoE pack coming up right afterwards and you're not going to have it available for that AoE pack, you would save your Shuriken Tornado. So while Shuriken Tornado isn't necessarily a single target button, it is still a very slight DPS increase on a single target. So you still want to use it, as long as you using it means you're not losing it on an actual AoE pack. So I'm going to demonstrate the AoE rotation right now. You want to start from Stealth. You do not need to use Slice and Dice because we have Premeditation, which gives us up to 10 seconds of Slice and Dice if we do not already have Slice and Dice running. If you do have Slice and Dice running from a previous pool or whatever, it gives you 2 extra combo points. So I'm going to demonstrate it and then I'll play it back in slow motion. You could follow along on the cast timeline, which is down here on my screen. And let's get it going. So we're going to go into this pool, starting with Shadow Strike. You can watch it at the bottom of the screen here. Then we send Blades and Symbols, Tornado, Thistlety with our Shadow Dance, Rupture as our first spender. I spam a couple Black Powders there, another Shadow Strike to get an extra Dance Macabre stack before our Symbols runs out. Then I use Cold Blood, Secret Technique, Vanish, Shadow Strike, Black Powder, Shuriken Storm, Black Powder, Shuriken Storm, Black Powder, and so on. And at this point, now that you're out of cooldowns, you would start using your Ruptures and getting it on the whole pack. So on single target, it's a little bit different. We're not going to use Tornado for this example because we're going to assume that this is just a big mob that you're leading into for something else after, or you're holding Tornado for your AoE. So I'm going to demonstrate it, and then we'll play it back, and I will go over the cast timeline with you. Okay, so we open up with Shadow Strike, then we use Symbols and Blades, Gloom Blade, Rupture as our first spender, Dance, Pot, T, Shadow Strike, Cold Blood with Secret Technique, Vanish, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate, Vanish, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate, Gloom Blade, and then you're just filling and watching your Rupture and your Slice and Dice to make sure they don't fall off. And then, of course, just using your Gloom Blades or Shuriken Storm if there's another mob in order to get those stacks up. So, just a couple quick notes about your Thistlety. On AoE, you want to be sending it with your dance. On single target, you want to send it with your initial dance, and then you only want to use your Thistlety when you're going to get the full 100 energy restore from it. So I'm just going to show how to use it properly here. So I send it with my initial whatever. And then we're waiting until we're absolutely starved on energy here. So right now, and I get my full value out of it. Also, I know I didn't do the rotation properly here. I was just demonstrating the Thistlety. So again, we're low on energy, and we can just keep on going for rotation. So on single target, only use it when you're below 50 energy. On AoE, make sure you're sending it with your dance to get maximum value out of the mastery benefit that it grants you. So for all of my weakauras, macros, and add-ons, you can check out the Discord. I have them all posted there. For my subtlety specific macros, which make playing this class so much easier, you can find them in the description below. For my general use macros, check out the other video on screen right now that goes to my macro guide. So this is probably one of the best macros for Subtlety Rogue. This is a mouse over Rupture. So I'm just going to show how this works. It works if I am targeting this target, it'll rupture the target that I'm targeting. If I'm mousing over this target, it'll rupture that target. That way you never really have to worry about tab targeting, and you could just set your ruptures throughout your pack just by mousing over the target that you need. The next macro that I use just for subtlety is Cold Blood Secret Technique. This one will make it so that way you automatically press your Cold Blood every time you press your Secret Technique, so I just drag and drop that onto my bars. The next macro I use is Dance Hot Thistlety. So this will make it so that way you're using your Battle Potion with your Thistlety and your Shadow Dance. The next macro is our Sub Go Go button. This uses Shadow Blades with Symbols of Death. I also have Symbols of Death bound separately in case I don't have Shadow Blades available. I can just hit my... You see I have mine bound to Shift 3-4 here, so if I want Blades and Dance at the exact same time for whatever reason, I can just hit my symbols and save my Blades, or vice versa, and so on. If you want all of my other very useful macros, be sure to check out that macro guide in the description. It is 10 out of 10. Lots of very useful things in there. I think that pretty much covers everything, guys. Hope you enjoyed the guide, and remember, like and subscribe if you like the content. Plenty of rogue content and plus content dropping all the time. We're also doing a 0 to Hero series where I'm tanking on a paladin, pugging the entire way up to Keystone Hero 2500 IO. So be sure to check out the channel for that as well, if that's something that interests you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.